What happens in a first counselling session? So if you've never been to counselling before, the first session can feel a little bit of a mystery and you might wonder what you're supposed to say. Whether it feel, awkward, whether you're about to talk about your whole life story, or whether you'll be judged. So I want to make it feel a little bit less unknown. Hey, my name is Allan. I'm a counsellor based in Cairns, and I support people locally, but of course I talk to people Australia-wide through online counselling, including video, phone call, and text-based support. I work with people mainly experiencing anxiety, grief, burnout, trauma, and disability-related stress, NDIS counselling needs, and those massive life changes. So many areas that I do work with lots of people. So the first thing I want you to know is that you do not have to come to counselling with the perfect words. A lot of people arrive at their first session and say something like, I don't know what to say, or I don't know where to begin, or I'm not even sure if this is even making sense, or, I feel silly about this. And honestly, that is completely okay. The first session is not about performing, and it's not about giving the perfect explanation, and it's not about proving that you're struggling enough to deserve support. It honestly is just a starting point. A first counselling session is usually about slowing things down enough so we can begin to understand what has been happening for you and what has been feeling difficult and what kind of support might actually be helpful. At the beginning of the session, we'll normally go through some very practical things first. That might include confidentiality, consent, privacy, fees, and how sessions work, how appointments are booked, and what information is kept, and what you can expect from counselling. I'll also explain the limits of confidentiality, and most of what you share stays private, but there honestly are some situations where extra support or action may be needed. For example, if there is a serious risk that you potentially might harm yourself or somebody else, or there are serious safety concerns, I may need to take steps to keep people safe. That part, honestly, I hear it can sound a little formal, but it really is about making sure that you understand your rights, your privacy, and how counselling works before we go any deeper. And after that, the session usually becomes more of a conversation. I might ask, what has brought you to counselling? What has been happening recently, and what has been feeling heavy, stressful, confusing, painful, or even hard to manage? And some people talk about anxiety, and some people talk about grief, and some people talk about burnout, trauma, family pressures, relationships, work stress, and the list goes on. And it really is important that you're able to take your time and explain those things. And sometimes people say, I don't know what's wrong, but I know I just don't feel myself. And that is enough to begin. You do not need to have a neat label. There's no labels within counselling for what you're experiencing. You do not need to diagnose yourself, and you do not need to have all the answers before reaching out to a counsellor. I'm tired, or I'm overwhelmed, or I'm not coping like I used to, or I'm feeling stuck. And I don't want to keep doing life this way. And from there, we work gently and practically. One thing I really want people to understand is that you do not have to share everything. You do not have to share everything in the first session. We go slowly. It's most important that we go slow. You're allowed to say, I'm not ready to talk about that yet, because I know that we can get into some very tough topics. And you're allowed to pause, and you're allowed to cry, and you're allowed to be quiet, and you're allowed to say, I don't know. Counselling, honestly, is not an interrogation. It is not somebody sitting across from you, judging you, or blaming you, or telling you what you should have done. A good counselling session should feel respectful, safe, and human. And the first session is partly about me getting to understand you, but it's also about you getting to know me as well as a counsellor. That matters because counselling is not about qualifications, techniques, or strategies. Those things are important, yes, but the professional relationship matters too. You need to feel that the person you are speaking with is listening properly. You need to feel respected, and you need to feel that you can be honest at your own pace. And sometimes people worry about counselling means they have to sit down and unpack their deepest trauma straight away. That's not how I work. If trauma is part of your story, we go carefully. We do not rush into the hardest parts before there is enough safety, trust, and stability. Sometimes the early work is not about telling the whole story. Sometimes the early work is about understanding your nervous system, noticing triggers and finding ways to feel more grounded, and building safety and helping people through the week with a little bit more support. That might look like practical strategies for anxiety. It might look like learning how to notice when you're becoming overwhelmed, and it might look like working on boundaries, understanding grief or unpacking guilt or shame, or making sense why certain situations affect you deeply. And sometimes it's simply about having the space where you do not have to pretend you're okay. During the first session, I may also ask you about your current supports. That could include family, friends, support workers, other professionals as well. And, it's really important to have that connection, that circle of support, and having that understanding of that support. I might ask you about your sleep and mood and stress and daily routines and how you usually cope with things when they become too much. That doesn't mean that there is something wrong with you. It just honestly helps me understand the bigger picture, because counselling is not just about what's happening in your head. It's all about what's happening in your entire life. Your relationship to responsibilities, your body, your environment, your past experiences and your supports and stress loads, and your sense of safety and your hopes for the future can all matter. We may also talk gently about what you would like to be different, not in a rush-pressured way, but in a way that helps you understand what support might be useful. For some people that I've worked with, it just might be feeling calmer. For others, it might mean understanding themselves a little bit better and feeling less overwhelmed. And for younger people, and also adults, building confidence is a very important tool as well. So you don't have to know the right answer straight away. Sometimes we work that out together. Towards the end of the first session, we'll usually look at what has stood out. We might talk about what felt important and the themes that come up and what would be useful to focus on in future sessions. And depending on what you need, we may also talk about the next steps. That might mean booking in another session, starting with a free meet and greet, or thinking about whether online counselling, phone counselling, or text-based support, or even in person if you're in Cairns, feels like the best fit. So it's about finding the best fit for you. The first session is not about fixing your whole life in 1 hour. I think that is really important, because sometimes people put pressure on themselves and they think, I should feel better immediately, or I should know exactly what I want from counselling. But the first session is about the beginning. It's about making sense of what you've been carrying, and it's about having a place where you can start speaking honestly, and it's about being met as a person, not as a problem to be fixed. And if you're nervous before your first counselling session, honestly, that's normal. It's your mind going blank, and that's normal. If you cry, that's normal. If you're unsure what to say, that's normal as well. And if the part of you wants support and another part of you feels scared about opening up, that is normal too. And you're not expected to have it all together. Often why people come to counselling in the first place. So if you've been thinking about counselling, but you've been putting it off because you don't know what to say, well, you can start with something simple. You can honestly say, I don't know where to begin. Or you can say, I feel overwhelmed, I've been carrying a lot, and I'm not sure what I need, but I know I need some support. That is more than enough. You do not need to have the perfect words, and you do not need to explain everything perfectly, and you do not need to be at breaking point before reaching out. You can start exactly where you are right now. If you'd like to book a counselling session or start a free meet and greet, the booking information is down below in the comments. I support people here in Cairns and Australia-wide through online counselling, so if you'd like to reach out, please do so. You do not have to work it out all before reaching out. You can start with one honest sentence and we can take it from there. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next video.